On 13 May 1943, deep inside the Wolfschanze, Adolf Hitler stood silently over a situation map, watching North Africa slip from German hands. He had trusted reports and promises, but now the Desert War had ended in defeat, and the collapse echoed far beyond Tunisia. In Berlin, generals waited for his reaction, knowing an entire army group was lost, and that history would judge every decision they made. The surrender in Tunisia wasn't sudden. It was the culmination of months of attrition, relentless air attacks, and broken supply lines. Field Marshal Rommel was already gone, recalled due to illness and frustration, while commanders argued over blame, loyalty, and what could have been done differently. For the German High Command, this was more than territory. It was prestige collapsing, strategy exposed, and enemies advancing with momentum. Inside headquarters rooms, voices hardened and tempers flared, because North Africa had promised leverage, not humiliation. The loss meant Allied control of the Mediterranean, an open path toward Italy, and the beginning of the Reich's slow retreat. What mattered now was what Germany told itself in meetings, thick with smoke and fear as reality closed in. This moment would shape every order that followed, from Berlin to the front, and it began with words spoken in shock. On 15 May 1943, the German High Command gathered in Berlin. Voices were low, faces drawn, as reports from Tunisia were read aloud. General Alfred Jodl spoke first, his tone careful but strained, describing the loss as inevitable, at least on paper. Wilhelm Keitel listened closely, hands folded, knowing Hitler demanded explanations, not excuses and loyalty above truth. The numbers were undeniable. Over 200,000 Axis troops captured, equipment abandoned, and airfields lost beyond recovery. In these rooms, defeat was never called defeat. It was miscalculation, betrayal by allies, or simply bad luck. Italian performance was quietly criticized, while German command decisions were defended with careful wording and selective memory. Hitler arrived late, already furious, pacing before maps and stabbing the African coast with his finger. He spoke of courage squandered, of commanders lacking will, and enemies who learned faster than expected. Yet beneath the rage, fear crept in, because North Africa had been the shield guarding Europe's southern door. Now that door stood open, and everyone in the room understood what followed next. Italy would be pressured, Sicily threatened, and German forces stretched thin across multiple fronts. On 18 May 1943, conversations inside the German High Command turned colder and far more realistic as optimism drained away. Maps were updated, pins moved northward, and the Mediterranean was no longer a distant theater, it was a direct threat. General Heinz Guderian warned quietly that armored reserves were insufficient, and Allied momentum would not slow. Others spoke of holding Italy, of turning mountains into fortresses, yet no one believed time was on their side. Hitler fixated on betrayal, accusing commanders of lacking ideological commitment while ignoring warnings he had once dismissed. North Africa had proven a brutal lesson. Air power decided wars. Logistics crushed bravery, and modern conflict spared no illusions. Inside closed sessions, officers admitted something unthinkable months earlier. The enemy now controlled the initiative. Every loss compounded another. Fuel shortages worsened, veteran units were gone, and replacements lacked experience. The High Command debated Sicily obsessively, knowing its fall would shatter Mussolini's regime and force Germany to intervene. This was no longer about Africa. It was about containment, slowing collapse, and choosing where to bleed least. On 20 May 1943, preparations intensified across Italy. As alarms spread from Rome to Berlin, Hitler ordered divisions southward, insisting speed mattered more than cohesion, while generals worried about exposure. In Berlin, meetings grew harsher, voices rose behind closed doors, and trust thinned rapidly. General Jodl cautioned restraint, citing air inferiority and fuel scarcity, but orders overruled analysis. Reports from Sicily were grim. Allied fleets massed offshore, and local defenses lagged. Italian leaders pleaded for reassurance, promising resistance if Germany committed fully, yet doubts lingered. Memories of Tunisia haunted planners, reminding them how air power strangled supply and morale collapsed. Hitler dismissed parallels angrily, claiming Italy offered terrain for redemption, not deserts of defeat. Behind the bravado, officers calculated losses, weighing divisions against Allied air fleets silently. North Africa's echo reshaped priorities, forcing Germany onto the defensive sooner than planned. On 9 July 1943, Allied aircraft filled the Mediterranean sky, and German observers reported movement impossible to ignore. Inside Berlin, the High Command received confirmation Sicily was the target, and Africa's lesson had returned. Hitler reacted with fury, demanding absolute resistance. Yet his voice carried strain. General Kesselring warned, cautiously, that air superiority was lost and ground forces were vulnerable. Memories of Tunisia resurfaced sharply. Commanders recalled how isolation broke armies. Italian morale wavered openly, units questioned orders, and whispers spread. German officers debated withdrawal, but ideology forbade retreat and pride intervened. Supplies moved slowly, Allied bombers struck rail lines, and confusion followed. The invasion began at night, storms raging, yet landings succeeded. Reports flooded headquarters, beaches breached, resistance fragmented, and control slipping. Hitler blamed allies again, accusing Italy of weakness and failure. Privately, generals understood. The Mediterranean strategy had collapsed entirely. On 25 July 1943, news reached Berlin. Mussolini had fallen and Italy trembled. Inside the High Command, silence replaced shouting, calculations turned grim, and loyalty felt fragile. Hitler reacted with disbelief, calling the coup treachery, yet immediately recognized the danger. Italy's collapse confirmed fears. Africa had been the prelude. Now the Allies deserted. German generals discussed evacuation. Routes north were limited, Allied pressure constant. Kesselring urged flexibility, warning of encirclement. Hitler refused withdrawal, insisting on holding Rome. Prestige demanded resistance. Orders tightened discipline, propaganda intensified, and doubt spread quietly. The Mediterranean theater consumed resources, diverting strength eastward, compounding risk. Africa's echo shaped every decision. Faster orders, harsher measures, and no room for error. Berlin confronted isolation, and the war tightened steadily. On 3 August 1943, German commanders gathered again, this time with fewer illusions and heavier silence. Reports from Italy worsened daily, roads bombed, ports unusable, and divisions stretched thin. The High Command spoke carefully now, words chosen to survive, not inspire. General Jodl admitted privately that North Africa had broken the strategic balance permanently. Others nodded, remembering how surrender cascaded once supplies failed and skies emptied. Hitler listened impatiently, interrupting often, rejecting any comparison to Tunisia outright. Yet his orders betrayed fear, demanding rigid defense lines regardless of cost. German units rushed northward, abandoning southern positions and leaving allies confused. Italian soldiers surrendered in groups. Civilians watched silently, sensing occupation approaching. Officers calculated timelines, and every answer pointed backward, not forward. Africa marked the beginning of a defensive war that would only get harder. On 8 September 1943, the announcement came. Italy had signed an armistice, and the room froze. Inside Berlin, the High Command absorbed the news slowly, shock giving way to grim acceptance. Hitler erupted in anger, declaring betrayal complete, and ordered the immediate occupation of Italy. Plans prepared after Africa were activated at once. German units moved decisively. Commanders spoke bluntly now. Lessons learned in Tunisia dictated speed, ruthlessness, and control. There would be no waiting, no negotiation, and no reliance on allies again. North Africa's collapse had taught them surrender spreads fast, if unchecked. German forces disarmed Italian units ruthlessly, seizing positions before the Allies could arrive. Logistics officers worked frantically, recalling how isolation had doomed forces before. Italy was now both battlefield and burden, stretching resources thinner. Africa's echo shaped every decision. Faster orders, harsher measures, and constant vigilance. On 15 October 1943, the German High Command reviewed reports, noting Italy had become a slow, bleeding front. Allied advances pressed northward. Mountains slowed them, yet air power punished every movement. In Berlin, officers spoke openly. Africa referenced constantly as the first fracture. General staff discussions focused on delay tactics, attrition, and buying months. Hitler demanded firm lines, invoking honor and sacrifice, yet resources argued otherwise. Fuel shortages worsened, veteran units thinned, and replacements arrived untested. Commanders recalled Tunisia, how isolation strangled resistance step by step. Every setback echoed Africa's pattern, and air dominance decided outcomes relentlessly. Privately, some generals admitted the Mediterranean gamble had failed entirely. North Africa had promised leverage. Instead, it drained strength irreversibly. Meetings grew shorter, decisions narrower, imagination replaced by necessity. Germany now fought a defensive war of exhaustion, reacting to enemy initiative. On 20 December 1943, the German High Command met once more. Winter pressing in, options nearly gone. Maps showed Italy locked in stalemate, divisions exhausted, airfields exposed, and supply lines fragile. North Africa was mentioned openly now, not as an excuse, but as the origin of decline. Senior officers spoke with restraint, acknowledging that strategic initiative had been lost permanently. Hitler still demanded endurance, invoking history, sacrifice, and destiny. His voice echoing, yet his generals understood the truth. The war had crossed a line beyond recovery. Tunisia's surrender had shattered confidence. Sicily confirmed vulnerability, and Italy drained strength. What the High Command said now was cautious, fatalistic, and quietly defensive. They spoke of delaying actions, of forcing the enemy to pay, not stopping them. Every decision aimed to slow collapse, preserve forces, and buy time. The Mediterranean had become a warning etched into memory. Air power ruled modern war. Officers no longer argued ideology. They argued kilometers, attrition, and survival. In the deserts of Africa, momentum had slipped away, and it would never return.